What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to Blazers Uprise Live, powered by BetUS here on a Thursday. Today, we're going to recap some more NBA playoff action as we have a Game 7. A Game 7 coming up between the Nuggets and the Clippers. And we have potentially a second Game 7 coming up between the Rockets and the Warriors, if the Rockets can win Game 6 tomorrow. We're also going to talk about a Blazers report. Eric, I absolutely love the time of year where we start getting Blazers rumors, and we're at that point right now. We have a juicy quote that we're going to react to from Jake Fisher, and we're also going to talk about a team that finally is admitting what they really need. So we got a jam-packed show for you guys. Hopefully you guys are having a good Thursday. Eric, how's it going, man?
That's going pretty good. How was your day, Tori?
My day could have went better, but it was all good. Happy to wind down today with this live stream. Chat, how was your day? What did you do today? Let me know in the live chat. I love how I'm pointing to my second monitor, but I haven't even put the chat on that second monitor yet, so I'm pointing at absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So recently I got a vertical monitor here that I love to put chat on because I can see chat and see a ton of chat and just have it on this vertical monitor. And I've gotten to the point where I start pointing at it when I talk to you guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys had a good day, a good Thursday. And I enjoyed watching some playoff basketball, man. It was 82 degrees in the Portland area. That was nice. So there's some good things about today, man. But yeah. Happy to jump into whatever you want to talk about, Eric. I'll let you lead us
Well,
off.
well, let's just get this out of the way. David Chavez asked, are you guys going to talk about what happened with the coaching staff? Um, since that's not like a huge topic, before we get into anything else, let's just mention the Blazers let go of three coaches, Roy Rogers being the most significant one. He's been with the team, I think, since Chauncey came in, right? He came in with Chauncey. Um, so let him go. Probably should have let him go last year when they let go of several other coaches. But also let go of Chris Fleming, who I think was brought in just last year, and also Ryan Gomes, your favorite. Tori is gone. I
My
don't know why.
favorite.
I don't know why I said that. You just seemed like you'd be a big Ryan Gomes fan back in the day, out of college or something. I don't know. Um,
That's just payback for me calling the Los Angeles Lakers your Los Angeles Lakers.
yeah, that's not even close to the same thing. But yeah, so the Blazers, I was thinking about someone like Mike Brown would be an awesome assistant coach, but then I keep thinking like, I mean, Nate Bjorkgren was always off the bench, always like up, like he was the coach, talking to Chauncey a lot. So I don't know if they're gonna bring in someone who's like a better assistant coach than him, and kind of reduce his role. I don't see them doing that. So um, I think it'll be more lower end guys, or guys who are comfortable being secondary assistant coaches. So yeah.
I'll say this. I was very surprised. It's strange to me how after a season that they touted the development of their young players that they let three assistant coaches go, because assistant coaches have as much to do with development as anyone else in the organization. The head coach oftentimes gets a lot of credit for developing players, but the assistant coaches are the guys that are kind of zeroing in on details with players, doing pregame work, that sort of stuff during the course of the season when maybe you're not practicing a whole lot. And Roy Rogers was kind of a big man coach. It's very surprising to me that they, after touting the development of their young players, let those three coaches go.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I saw it. I mean, not that it's like a bad thing or anything, but yeah, we let. I guess it was mutual, right, when they let Scott Brooks go. But he had been given credit for like working with some of the young guys. Anisha Curry wasn't brought back after a year. A lot of players said that she was working with them very closely, things like that. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that they would make significant changes if they're trying to tout how good of a coaching job they did this last season.
Yeah. It's weird how they love the status quo except for their assistant coaches. Their assistant coaches, they turn over pretty regularly. But then when it comes to trading Jeremy Grant or trading Anthony Simons or trading DeAndre Ayton, trading Robert Williams, who we're going to talk about in a sec because there's an interesting quote on him. When it comes to trading those guys, we're going to keep things the same. When it comes to Chauncey Billups, 4 years in, we'll extend him for 3 more seasons. But assistant coaches, after a season where we think we developed pretty well, yeah, those guys are going to go. Very kind of funny to me the way that works, but you know what? Hopefully they bring in good assistant coaches. Hopefully they bring in coaches that can help Chauncey take the leap as a coach. We've talked about how Chauncey admitted what he needs to work on in his exit interview, and it was pretty spot on. Maybe they want to bring in guys that can help Chauncey make those improvements. I don't know. We'll see. But, who am I to complain about them actually changing something? Because I'm always asking for them to do something. So I guess this is what we get, Eric, although this offseason, I'm just going to foreshadow this whole time. This offseason could see a lot of roster change, maybe. We'll see. We'll talk about it.
Greg says assistant coaches sometimes want to move on, and that could have been true as well. Maybe those guys were interested in other jobs, and we just kind of let them go to pursue those other opportunities. But I don't know. You have to think if the team wanted those guys back, they wouldn't have let them go. The release sounded like the Blazers were the ones that made that decision, not them. So. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to get a promotion elsewhere, so I feel like it was more so the Blazers moving on from them than anything else. But I don't know.
Greg also says Andre Miller wants to coach. That'd be cool to bring him back.
Yeah, we already throw pretty good lobs, but that was a premier lob thrower. Of course, it was always LaMarcus Aldridge spinning away from the elbow towards the rim. And that's a tough lob pass to time, and Andre Miller was a master of that. Andre Miller could be a pretty good coach, and, for these 3 spots, probably good to get somebody new, somebody experienced, somebody that knows how to run a creative offense, that can inspire Chauncey. That's the type of combination, I guess, I'm looking for. I don't really know. At the end of the day, the buck stops with Chauncey next season. And whether or not he can design a better offense than what we've seen from him over his time here in Portland. And that is going to be the primary grade of coaching as a whole for this team is can Chauncey Billups, whether it's him, whether it's his assistants, whoever, can they finally run creative stuff, get more motion in the half court, get more movement, get guys in easier spots to score, that sort of stuff. That is going to be the number 1 evaluation point for the coaching next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about, it's funny because at the start of the stream in chat, I see a comment. So is Tori and Eric upset that there are some rumors about us being hopefully active this offseason? We'll talk about it. But first, we got to talk about the NBA playoffs. You had 2 games today, the first of which was the Knicks downing the Pistons in Game 6, 116-113 to win that series in 6 games. Jalen Brunson has 40 points, including a go-ahead 3 with 4.1 seconds left. That was a series winner. Now, it wasn't as cool as a Damian Lillard series winner because he does it at the buzzer. But still, nonetheless, a great game from Jalen Brunson. He has been phenomenal all playoffs long. Of course, he suffered from an injury late in the season, and there was some question marks whether he'd be 100% going into the playoffs. Yeah, he came back, looked good at the end of the regular season, looks phenomenal in the playoffs. The Knicks don't have to worry about that. They do have to worry about the Boston Celtics. That's who they have up next. But this was a game, Eric, and there's been games like this in this series. This was a game the Pistons were up 5 with a couple minutes left. This was a game that the Pistons could have won, and there was multiple games that the Knicks won that the Pistons could have or should have won. Of course, there was the Tim Hardaway 3 at the buzzer, basically, that Josh Hart fouled him on that didn't get called. That was an obvious foul that should have went Detroit's way. Should have been a win in Detroit's hand there. This game was a game they should have won. They led late. I believe game 2, if I recall correctly, was another game that was very, very close down to the wire. And this is, I think, the perfect example of a series where experience wins out, because you could make the case that the Pistons were just as good or better than the Knicks in this series. But the Knicks won when it mattered. You know, they made clutch plays, and the Pistons fell apart in the last 2 minutes, and every possession matters. We hear that about the playoffs. Every possession mattered, basically, this entire series. I think it was a really good showing from the Pistons, given that they had no playoff experience in their first playoff series with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson. He was pretty good today. But, man, it feels like they could have definitely won this series, but they didn't come up clutch.
Yeah, game 1, they gave up that 21-0 run in the fourth quarter. Tonight, you have who was one of, if not the best three-point shooters in the league this year, in Malik Beasley, pulling a Gary Trent Jr. impersonation in the final seconds and letting the ball fall out of bounds. Tough way to lose it for the Pistons. I think there's 2 ways to look at it if you're Detroit. One is you had a great season. You made the playoffs outright without even being in the play-in. I mean, that would have been crazy. Like, I think every Pistons fan takes that, right, heading into this season, if you tell them that that's what's going to happen. And then on top of that, you, make it a series with the Knicks, who had just traded for Mikal Bridges and Cat at the time. So I think you're happy if you're a Pistons fan, but it also kind of stings that I think looking back at this series, they should have won this series and should be in the second round right now.
Yeah. The interesting thing about all this is they didn't have Jaden Ivey. Of course, he got hurt after having a decent start to his season, missed the second half of the season, missed the playoffs. I think he's kind of the X factor for them going forward. Would he have helped this team in this series? I don't know. He's kind of a volatile player, for lack of a better word. He's a guy that can have some really good moments, but have some really bad games. He's not the most consistent shooter. It would have been interesting to see how he fared in this series and if he would have made a difference, because instead you get Malik Beasley, who hitting threes. He had 20 points today. He had a sick halftime buzzer beater. But going forward, you look at this Pistons team, what's next? They don't have their pick this year. I believe, I forget what the protections were on it, but the assumption going into the season was like, oh yeah, that pick won't convey. They'll have their pick. They're going to be in the lottery again. No, they're in the playoffs. They're 6 seed, so that pick conveys. So what's next for them? You get Jaden Ivey back. Can he continue to improve, continue to grow? Can he be healthy next season? Can he help them take the next step? Because what really helped the Pistons this year was they had some good shooting finally off the bench. Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Asar Thompson, when he did play, of course, he missed the start of the season. He was really good defensively, but the biggest reason for their jump was Cade Cunningham's jump. He went from maybe a fringe star to a borderline superstar and was phenomenal for the Pistons all season long. And it's going to be hard for him to have another jump beyond where he's reached, because he's probably a borderline, top 15 player, top 12 player. He's in those conversations now. So, maybe he has another step left in him, but I don't know. I think the question is, while they're young, is all right, who's going to take that leap that's really going to catapult this team? And if not somebody on this roster, do they get aggressive on the trade market this offseason? Do they go after a Zion if he's available, right? They're going to be a fun team to watch from a roster building standpoint, because they're in a good spot given how young they are, but they do have some assets after they lose this pick this year to maybe be a little bit aggressive, and they do have some intriguing young talent that maybe could make a jump, but nothing certain with them, We've seen young teams, get to this point, have a competitive first-round series, lose, and then fall off. I don't think that will be the Pistons, but I do think they should maybe be a little bit more aggressive this offseason, trying to get a number 2 next to Cade or a number 3 that, they had some really bad offensive lulls in the playoffs and lost a lot of close games. So maybe they should be aggressive going after somebody that can swing the balance for them in a series like this.
Yeah, and if you look at them and the Rockets, two teams that I think a lot of Portland fans and Portland front office thinks we have a chance of replicating next year as two teams that were on the outside of the playoffs looking in last year and then both easily make the playoffs this year. I think it's kind of interesting to see that both of those teams went very vet heavy in their offseason signings and things like that. You have the Pistons signing Beasley, Tobias Harris, and Tim Hardaway Jr. You have the Rockets, of course, going after Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and players like that a couple years ago. So is that the blueprint that Joe Cronin's going to follow? We'll discuss that more later, but those vets definitely do help you take the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. So weird this playoff bracket did not update. We do have, let me update this real quick. We do have a set in stone second round here. We do have a set in stone second round in the East. We have the Cavs taking on the Pacers. We have the Celtics taking on the Knicks. Eric, my question for you, and my question for chat too, is which series are you looking forward to the most? And which series do you think is going to be more competitive? Is it Cavs Pacers or is it Knicks Celtics?
I'm more looking forward. I mean, you got the traditional great matchup with Knicks Celtics, but I'm more looking forward to Cavs Pacers. The Cavs look great in round one. I mean, frankly, the Pacers look really good too. The Pacers went to the conference finals last year. They're right back here in a similar situation to possibly go again. I don't know. I feel like this is kind of a doubt them at your own peril like type of situation because they've proven it in the playoffs that they can beat teams and make it. But the Cavs look so good too. So I'm very fascinated on what's going to happen in that series.
Yeah, what's funny is going into the playoffs, I thought the Pacers were being slept on, man. We did our playoff bracket predictions. There's 7 of us, including chat. I was the only one to take the Pacers. We have Javon in chat saying we got Javon in chat who took the Bucks going all the way. Listen, I wish the Bucks went all the way. I wish Dame was healthy, and I wish Dame got a ring, of course. But Javon, my guy, took the Bucks all the way with that crappy supporting cast and Doc Rivers as their head coach. And now, of course, he's in chat saying Cavs in 5, still doubting the Pacers. I think this series is going at least 6 games, but in my bracket, I picked the Pacers taking the Cavs to a Game 7 and losing in Cleveland. I think this series is going to be more competitive than people realize. I feel like the assumption is like, oh yeah, the Cavs have been dominant all season. It's just the Pacers, right? The Bucks were injured. The Cavs are going to win in 5. I feel like that's maybe the common thought right now. I think this series is going long. I think the Pacers are going to have games where they just purely outscore the Cavs. And listen, it's very hard to outscore the Cavs. They have a really good defense. They have Defensive Player of the Year in Evan Mobley. But if there's a team that can do it, it's the Indiana Pacers. It's Tyrese Halliburton. They've been one of the best offenses in the league the past couple of years. And I don't know, I could just see a game or two where the Cavs struggle to keep up with the Pacers offensively. I think there's going to be a couple games that the Cavs maybe dominate. Maybe the Pacers don't make shots. But the Pacers can really score the ball. They've gotten a little better defensively. I think the Pacers are going to give the Cavs some issues. I still think the Cavs are going to win, and I have the Cavs going all the way and winning the championship, but I do think this round you should not overlook the Indiana Pacers. They're more competitive than people realize.
Yeah, completely agree. And they have, the offense that can put up points. So even as offenses tend to bog down, they can score with most teams in this league. Now, maybe on the defensive end, they're not as good. I think, obviously, the Darius Garland status will be important. It looks like he should be okay, but, if any of the main four for the Cavs miss games, it could easily sway this series to the Pacers' way.
I always love the good old Elizabeth Allen comment with anything I say. Like, no, I don't think anyone is overlooking the Pacers. They're more not overlooking the Cavs for the first time. 6 out of 7 people picked the Pacers to lose in the first round, okay? So people were obviously overlooking the Pacers. Chat thought Bucks were going to run away with that series. And, yeah, Dame was hurt game 1. We knew that going into that series. People still thought the Bucks were going to win. Dame's injury sucks and all that, for sure. But, the Pacers, I thought, even if Dame was healthy, was clearly going to win that series. People were definitely overlooking them before this series, I feel like, at least in Blazers fandom. You could say they weren't, but no, the Pacers are for real. Let me know your prediction for that series in the chat. Cavs or Pacers? How many games? Cavs in 5, Cavs in 6, Cavs in 7, Pacers? You taking the Pacers? Let me know in the live chat. And the Knicks Celtics, also let me know who you got. Between Knicks Celtics, I forget what I picked in this series, Eric. I just have a feeling the Celtics are going to win in like 5 games and it's going to be easy. I feel like everybody, I don't know, maybe not, I shouldn't use the word everybody, but I feel like people are going to expect Celtics Knicks to go long and Cavs Pacers to be a little less competitive, but I think it's going to be the opposite. I think the Celtics are going to run away with this series. I think the Pacers are going to take the Cavs long. We'll see.
Yeah, the Knicks loaded up on wings. Defensive wings primarily in McHale and OG. We know Josh Hart is a solid defender as well. So they got 3 guys that they can run at some of these weapons on the Celtics. So I think they match up fairly decent with them. I can't see the Knicks stopping them enough though because, if you stop all those guys, you still have Pritchard who's playing awesome. You still have Derek White, Porzingis, the guys who can get buckets as well. So I just think you're right that I have a feeling the Knicks are going to get overwhelmed by the Celtics in this series.
Yeah, the Celtics have big, versatile, quick defenders to put against Jalen Brunson. I feel like that's the type of defense you want on Jalen Brunson. Somebody quick enough to stick with him on the perimeter, but then when he gets inside the arc, you have some size. He's really good once he gets into the paint with his pivots, pump fakes, his craftiness. You want some size on him. With Drew Holiday at 6'4", one of the best guard defenders in the league, but you also got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, 2 guys that you can throw up against them, and maybe people don't think of them as elite defenders, but they're quick and they have size. And in the playoffs, they've had some really good defensive moments, especially last season en route to their championship. I think the key to beating the Knicks is slowing down Jalen Brunson. You saw Jalen Brunson absolutely win this game for the Pistons, against the Pistons, hit the game winner with 4 seconds left, score 40 just to get the Knicks a 3-point win. I don't think it's a good sign that the Knicks struggled with the Pistons because the Celtics are just a much better team and a much more experienced team. The Knicks aren't going to get a 21-0 run against the Celtics. So I would love for this series to be competitive. I want more Game 7s. I love long series, especially because I think the basketball has been really good in this postseason. But I think the Celtics win in 5. I think the Pacers lose to the Cavs in 7. That's kind of bold. We'll see what happens. The Western Conference playoffs, Eric. We got the Timberwolves advancing over the Lakers. That was a shocker.
Not necessarily a shocker, just that it happened in 5 games.
5 games was a shocker to me, man.
And just the way they completely controlled most of those games. but yeah, Rudy Gobert, man, what a game from him in Game 5. He was awesome on the glass, especially the offensive glass, and the Lakers had no answer for him. They went small and got punished for it. And
Yeah.
I do. I think all this stuff like, oh, this proves that Nico was right trading Luca and all this stuff. That's way premature and stupid, especially with the package you got back for him. But
It's not even like Luka was that bad in this series. It was they have no big depth and they have no wing defenders' athleticism. They have no lob targets for Luka. We saw Luka feast with Lively and Gafford as lob targets last year. So yeah, this series I don't think really had anything to do with Luka.
yeah, and also, I mean, you have to get players that mesh well with him, and that's what Nico had been doing in Dallas with bringing in Lively in the draft and trading for Gafford, bigs that can rim run and are a little bit switchable on defense. So until the Lakers and they Palinka and JJ, they address this in their exit interviews today, but um, they definitely have to find ways to tweak this roster with kind of limited assets towards maximizing Luca and LeBron's final year or two in the NBA.
Yeah, they need big men help. If they had a healthy Mark Williams, they might win this series. Part of the reason why Gobert was so dominant in Game 5 was because the Lakers basically started LeBron at center. I mean, they basically
It was like Rui technically.
Rui
yeah.
Hachimura at center. I love my guy Rui, and he had a good Game 5, but I mean, they just could not compete on the board. Some of it was just not boxing out, not being scrappy, but they need a true legit center. Miles Turner's a free agent this offseason. I have a feeling they're going to try to chase him. I don't think Turner will ever leave the Pacers because he's been in trade rumors for 8 years and survived them every single time, and he's still an Indiana Pacer, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But I think, a sign-in trade for that type of guy, or maybe a Nick Claxton comes into play, although Nick Claxton's a little undersized, but he's really good defensively, so I don't know how he would have fared against Gobert in a playoff series. Also, in the playoffs, you see poor free throw shooters get fouled, and then teams are more willing to play that strategy. Nick Claxton's one of the worst free throw shooters in the league, so I don't know who they go after. Maybe it's Robert Williams. Maybe it's DeAndre Ayton. Maybe it's Uprise. I don't know. We'll see. But you got Rockets Warriors Game 6 coming up. Hopefully they force a 7th game. And then the other series going on right now, you had the Clippers just beat the Nuggets to force a Game 7.
We got a Game 7, yeah.
Finally, man. I was worried. It feels like we have far fewer Game 7s. If you remember 2014, I believe it was, when Dame hit that series winner against Houston to end that series in 6. I think there was 6 Game 7s across the league. So now it's like, yay, we get one. We get one, which is funny because I feel like there's a little bit more parity in the league and it's a little bit more competitive than it was back then. But you have some series that were very competitive, but the Knicks and Pistons didn't go 7, even though that series was extremely close. You have the Rockets and Warriors have been battling back and forth. I think that's been a pretty evenly matched series so far. So we'll see if that goes 7. I would love for 2 Game 7s, but you got the Clippers taking care of business at home. The Nuggets almost came back on them. The Nuggets were down. I forget how much they were down, but they were down big, like close to 20 points or so in the second half and cut it to within 5. You had Nikola Jokic kind of have a quieter game by his standards. 25, 8, and 7 is a quieter game for him. That's just how crazy he is. But you know who it was in the second half, man? It was 2 former Blazers. Norman Powell had a good second half. He was 9 for 15, 2 for 6 and 3. But Nick Batum played the whole second half. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. He played the whole second half and was guarding Jokic for a stretch. and then was guarding Jamal Murray for a stretch. And we're talking about a dude who's getting into his late 30s, the Blazer legend. He's been around for a while. 6 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals. Had some huge defensive plays. Blocked Jokic at the rim. It was cool to see Nick Batum out there changing the complexion of a playoff game in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of those glue guys who just makes plays in key moments. Had a nice pass to Norm in the corner for a 3. Hit a 3 himself. Just really nice game for Batum.
Yeah, love to see it, man. I don't love to see it from Norman Powell, but I'm kind of to the point where I'm like past my Powell hatred. It's been long enough, and he's not GP, screw you, okay? GP 2 weeks, whatever you want to call him. Ever since GP 2 weeks, man, he's, I don't know. I don't have as much venom for Norm Powell. I didn't like him when he left. I felt like he kind of quit on the team, but he's no GP 2 weeks, so... yeah. Shout out to Norm. He was really good in the second half. And then Kawhi and Harden doing their thing. It's funny because the Clippers have a lot of guys that are kind of up there in age or been around for a while. So it's always kind of fun to watch them. Guys like Harden, guys like Kawhi, guys like Batum, even a guy like Bogdanovich has been around for a decade now. So we'll see. You got Patty Mills on their bench.
Liam wants to know why you hate Norm, or why you hated Norm.
Oh, just because I felt like his effort before he got traded was absolutely terrible. Like, that season defensively, he just kind of quit and didn't seem like he wanted to be there. Like, he just resigned so he could get his 5-year, $90 million contract, and then didn't really care to put in effort. And then gets traded to the Clippers for like nothing and is all happy about it. It's like, yeah, you didn't really want to be here. It was pretty obvious. So that's why I didn't like him. I felt like he kind of quit on the team, which I never respect. But that team was a mess anyways. So
yeah.
Anyway, that is it for Around the NBA. Now we have to talk about... This is the wrong overlay.
Your Orlando Magic.
No. We're going to... You want to talk about the Magic now?
I don't know. Just kind of fit with it around the NBA. But
I feel like it kind of fits with the
later.
Blazers off season,
Yeah.
The Blazers off season. No, we can talk about the Magic. Let's talk about the Magic. There we go. We'll talk about this. Then we'll talk about what was said for the Blazers as far as their off season. So...
Yeah, so they had exit interviews the other day, and their president of basketball operations, Jeff Weltman, basically said that the team was entering super duper win now mode. No, he mentioned the team was entering a win now phase.
A win now phase.
Yes.
We love going through phases.
Yeah. So we'll see, because he also talked about how he didn't want to go all in on rental players or things like that. He wanted to make trades at the why he didn't make a big move at the deadline, even though they had all these same needs and everyone knew what they needed. So he's not saying anything different today or yesterday, whenever it was. But he said that they couldn't get stuff done at the deadline because he didn't want to give up too much or whatever. Does that sound familiar, Tori?
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, he said he had some talks that lasted right up until the deadline with some teams, but the asking price was just too much for what they wanted to give up.
Maybe he planted some seeds, though.
Yeah, maybe. But multiple times in his exit interview, he mentioned their need for proven offense. Proven offensive players, proven shot makers, someone that's going to come in and augment our weaknesses. So like he just kept mentioning that they needed shot making and players that can can score the ball, basically.
Augment our weaknesses sounds like such an Olshey quote.
Mm-hmm.
Is he secretly Neil Olshey?
Did he get like a consultation job there that we didn't know
Yeah,
about?
and he's just feeding vocabulary for interviews.
They have to bifurcate their need for shooting with something else. I don't know.
Yeah, augment their weaknesses and make sure you have a water bottle ready. All right, that's probably the advice he's giving. So the scoring thing, though, Eric, like they finally admit they need scoring. Basically, is what that is.
Yep. And they admitted they knew they needed it and couldn't get it earlier. So, yeah.
Could this mean Anthony Simons is finally headed home? Because he says he doesn't want to trade for a rental, which I absolutely get, but also Ant's from there, so you'd have to think like they could trade for him and get him to resign probably right away, right?
Sign an extension or something.
Yeah, extension. Have that peace of mind. We kind of talked about this last stream, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it did intrigue me. It did intrigue me because we've just constantly looked at this freaking team as the place for Anthony Simons. They obviously need scoring. He's obviously a great fit there. They mask his weaknesses well. He augments their strengths or weaknesses. I don't know. He's a great fit. So I think, that quote, Eric, makes it sound like they were... Maybe it wasn't Anthony Simons, but thinking about the way Cronin handles negotiations and then hearing that quote makes me wonder if, they were trying to get Anthony Simons, but Cronin, like usual, has too high of an asking price that he won't budge off of. But now seeds are planted between the two of them.
Yeah, we'll see if that ultimately ends up being the case. But I might have some bad news for you, Tori. I heard something today.
Okay, we'll see if I believe it or not. What did you hear?
Yeah, we'll see if we believe it or not.
Are you just gonna foreshadow it? Like, are you gonna wait?
Well, I mean, I could wait until we talk about
it. Doesn't it fits into the next? All right.
But
we're done with this. No, we're gonna move on. We're gonna listen to the Jake Fisher clip, okay? And because I just want to know. What you... It's probably the same thing that you've been hearing as far as, the Magic don't want Ant. But we'll see, chat. We'll see what the Brant Bomb says. All right? My only request is that you don't say you're not trying to be Woj or whatever you... Well, nobody's trying to be Woj anymore because I don't know how many people love St. Bonaventure.
I am trying to be the GM of St. Bonaventure. That would be a cool job.
Yeah, that would be... You would enjoy that type of job. But let's just jump into the Jake Fisher clip. All right? Let me update this. So, let me preface this by saying this is kind of some stuff we already knew. Also, kind of some stuff that we talked about a year and a half ago, right after the Dame trade. And if you have not heard this clip, it's a 2.5-minute clip. I'm going to play the whole thing. Shout out to Bleacher Report. Shout out to Jake Fisher for this clip. And I really want to know your guys' thoughts on what Jake Fisher has to say in the live chat. I'll be reading it while we play this clip. Here's what Jake Fisher had to say about your Portland Trail Blazers.
The Blazers had some changes on their coaching staff earlier in the week. And from my understanding, this is really going to be the first opportunity for Chauncey Billups and Joe Cronin to work in tandem together. Now they're both on multiple year contract extensions to move forward and build this staff that, without a doubt, there's the expectation in Portland that they are going to be factoring into the playoff picture next season. That is definitively the goal. It's something Cronin said publicly in his exit interview with the media alongside Chauncey Billups. That has been kind of their goal ever since trading Damian Lillard. We've talked about it here previously. The Blazers never really had a total rebuild in mind. That was why they targeted Robert Williams in their return for Drew Holiday after they got Drew back from Milwaukee for Damian Lillard. They wanted Malcolm Brogdon to be mentoring their young guys. They went out and bought on the market last summer, went out and spent 2 first-round picks on Denny Avdia, who has been nothing but successful there. So there's going to be clear, continued emphasis on trying to build this thing forward and move Portland in. The Blazers had some changes on their coaching staff earlier in the week. And from my understanding, this is really going to be the first opportunity for Chauncey Billups and Joe Cronin to work in tandem together. Now they're both on multiple year contract extensions to move forward and build this staff that, without a doubt, there's the expectation in Portland that they are going to be factoring in.
Oh. Anyway, that's what he had to say. And yeah, that's what he had to say. I forgot I was looping the clip. Interesting comments. There is like 6, 7 different things to touch upon here.
Yeah.
First, I will say I don't really understand the whole comment about like this is their opportunity to work in lockstep with each other because they both just got extensions. I mean, maybe that's like alluding to, the future was up in the air in the past.
This last year, but how does that apply to like the first couple of years?
I don't know, but like they were in a different mode the first couple of years. Like they were still at Dame, so maybe it's just in regards to like this rebuild and progressing out of it. I don't know.
So they weren't trying to win with Dame.
Yeah, well, I don't know. So I don't really understand those comments. Like I'm just kind of guessing as to the context behind them. But I thought what was interesting was the whole part about how they never intended to fully rebuild. And that's why they targeted Robert Williams.
Yeah. I mean, if you watched the show, you knew that was the case, right? I think maybe what he means is, like maybe he just misspoke and it means since the Dame trade that Chauncey's not going to be like told to tank or to like the front office isn't going to want to tank. Like they're both in lockstep on both of them wanting to win as many games as possible and make the playoffs. I think maybe that's the first time they've been in tandem. Because even if you go back to the Dame years, I'm not so sure the front office, and I mean, obviously they did tank those seasons, so I don't think Chauncey wanted to necessarily tank those games on purpose. So I think in tandem just means that this is the first season they have clear expectations, both from the front office and from Chauncey Billups, as we're not tanking this year. We're going for the playoffs, and we're going to make moves this offseason to accomplish that.
Yeah. Here's the problem with this quote. It basically means that Portland doesn't really have a long-term plan to contention. They have a shorter-term plan to try and get to the playoffs. And of course, as part of a long-term plan towards contention, one of the steps towards contention is you become a play-in team, become a playoff team, become a contender, right? So some people will say, what's the difference between a long-term plan to get to contention and a shorter-term plan to get to the playoffs and then you try and get to contention after that? That's the same thing, right? The difference is you have to set up your team with enough assets and enough upside to get to contention. And if you do that properly, you're going to make the playoffs. But that's not your end goal. That's different than just trying to get good enough to make the playoffs without having the upside after that to take the next steps towards contention. That's the difference between having a long-term plan to get to contention and a shorter-term plan just to try and get to the playoffs. But if it's true which I believe it is because you've said it numerous times. Jake Fisher's saying it now about how, after trading Dame, they thought they were going to be better and they kind of wanted to be a decent team after trading Dame. And, that's why they kept Malcolm Brogdon. That's why they had Robert Williams. That's why they valued getting back DeAndre Ayton. And then
that's the real reason they re-signed Jeremy Grant, too.
And they re-signed Jeremy Grant and paid him to a massive contract.
That wasn't because they wanted to keep Dame happy.
Yeah. They knew Dame was going to ask out. They signed Jeremy to a massive contract. It's pretty obvious. They were not set on, going into full rebuild mode, even though going into full rebuild mode is what the Blazers kind of needed to do to get enough assets and get enough young players, get enough draft capital in order to have the upside later on. Okay, this has been the biggest talking point in regards to roster construction for this channel in regards to this team the past 2 years. What have we talked about? We've talked about, okay, why do we have so many vets on the team? They're in the way of young players, and I don't want to win more games because we have vets on the team. If the young players break out and play so good we win more games, fine, so be it. But we're still sitting here entering the 2025 offseason, 2 offseasons after trading Dame. We still got Jeremy Grant here. We still got Robert Williams here. We still got Anthony Simons here. We still got have DeAndre Ayton here. We still have Matisse Thybulle here. Right? We still have all these dudes here. Those 5 guys are making a combined $125 million, right? 2 offseasons after trading Dame. Those guys haven't moved at all. The only guy that moved was Malcolm Brogdon, but the Blazers, as Jake Fisher said, gave up 2 first-round picks to get Deni Avdija. I like the trade. I love the trade. Deni Avdija, a really good fit with the Blazers' young core, but it was almost like, they're making that trade trying to be better this past season. So every step along the way, it's been this team isn't really making any moves to necessarily get worse. When it's obvious that they're not going to make the playoffs, they have tanked. But this year, it's like they didn't tank soon enough because they had a slim chance of getting the 10th seed. And the broadcast was hyping that up. And this is a long-winded way of saying this team has not been set on rebuilding, accumulating assets, and, gaining flexibility, shedding salary, shedding vets, maybe for pennies on the dollar, where maybe they get some assets back and then having the cap space to take on contracts with first-round picks attached. So they had a bunch of first-round draft pick capital. That has not been the mode this team has been in. This team has been in the mode of let's just get back to being relevant enough as soon as possible. And yeah, that's a good plan to maybe get to the playoffs, but they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves this offseason to satisfy the fan base because they have playoff aspirations, so fans are going to expect that next year. And, it'll be fun to try and go for a playoff spot next year, to have a better basketball team to cover next year. Long term, still have concerns about this team's ability to take that step to contention. Now, maybe you can get to the playoffs so that everything breaks right down the line and you get to contention. I am not sure. But those are my thoughts. Eric, what are your thoughts?
See, I do think making the playoffs should be the expectation this year. And I see everything you're saying. I agree with it. At the same time, I look at 20 out of the 30 teams make at least the play-in, and 16 teams out of 30, so over half, make the playoffs. It shouldn't be that hard to take this next little jump from where they're at, 11th seed to 8th seed. So that should be the bottom, the lowest expectation this next year is at least the play-in and maybe make the playoffs. Maybe you lose in the play-in or whatever. But that should be the minimum. So you shouldn't build your roster with that being your goal. I completely agree with that. So that should be a natural step in bumping up, and you should be maximizing how to achieve better than that, in my opinion. And so hopefully that is the goal. But as we seen with this front office, it seems like their plan is just to kind of hope something good happens, and sometimes it does, like the Denny trade, and going back a few years, Jeremy Grant, they have a situation where they have the ability to take on his contract, and they have a team that needs to shed salary to make another move to get another lottery pick, and it works out perfect, and everything's good. But you can't like keep hoping that that's gonna keep happening over and over again. So they need to have some sort of better structure. Hopefully they do, but I just feel like the expectation should be playoffs, but they can't make moves just to squeak into the playoffs next year.
Yeah. We got a comment in chat. We have 4 players with star potential who are under 25. Who? Who are the 4 with star potential under 25? Like, you could say Scoot, you could say Denny, you could say Sharp. Here's the thing. If those guys have star potential, then there's probably half the league has 4 guys with star potential. That's the problem, is like, fan bases will always overhype their young talent compared to the rest of the league. Because guess what? It's like Benedict Mathurin had pretty much as good of a season as Shaden Sharp. If Benedict Mathurin was here, people would be hyping him up like they're hyping up Shaden Sharp. Right? But no, he's on the Pacers. They're a winning team. He like comes off the bench, still plays decent minutes. But it's like, Blazer fans are going to sit there and say he has all-star upside and he's under 25. But if you're applying what you're applying to Scoot, Sharp, to that team, like, he has all-star upside too, and that's the problem. You can go across the league and find a bunch of teams with a bunch of guys like that. So it's like, but you only apply it to your own team just because that's the team you watch. So, I don't know. Like, Sharp has upside, Scoot has upside. Who knows if they even prioritize both those guys? They still have Anthony Simons on the roster, right? Denny has upside, but he has to take another step like he did this year, and he was one of the most improved players in the league this year. It's hard to be that, take that many steps, but maybe he can do it. I don't know. But you're just banking on a lot going right with the players on this team. And here's the thing is like, all right, if they get aggressive, it's like, do they trade one of those guys? Do they trade for someone who plays in front of one of those guys in order to make the playoffs sooner? Like, that's the thing. If you have a more shorter-term approach, I don't really know what the answer to that is. I think the Blazers are extremely unpredictable going into this offseason, actually. I have no idea what they're going to do. I'm a little worried about what they're going to do. So we'll just have to wait and see. But, I mean, the thing is you can sit here and say, like, yeah, we got guys with an all-star ceiling, but it's not like we have, Cade Cunningham from last year, where it was like he's already a fringe star. It's like, yeah, he's definitely going to be at least star level. We have nobody like that. So that's the thing, is it just depends on how you parse that conversation and how you contextualize that conversation, because it's not as black and white. It's like, we have guys that could be a star. There's guys that are much more likely to turn into stars. There are guys that it's much more of a long shot. So that's the problem when you just say star upside. You don't really take that into account.
Yeah, my biggest worry would be, Jeremy Grant helped us get to this point. We need to keep him type situation, right? Thibault, look how good he played when he came back. He's part of our core now, right? I could definitely see them holding on to some of these players and thinking they have a rotation with depth that's going to possibly hurt some of their development.
Yeah.
Overlay tripping, says Connor.
I accidentally moved my webcam. Ignore it. I think, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do this year. I can't predict it this offseason. Like, the most obvious swing thing for me is, like, they trade for Zion. It's like Scoot, 10, the trade we talked about last stream. Outside of that, I don't know what else a swing could look like. I don't think they'd go after Sabonis, but I don't know. It's tough. I don't know if the Kings will trade Sabonis. I think if the Kings trade Sabonis, their ownership still wants them to be competitive enough to be in the play-in, so it's not really a match. Like, who are you getting back? Also, it's like, if you value Klingon as much as they did the past draft, why are you trading for a center? Like, I think they're very unpredictable this offseason. Eric, do you feel that way?
Yes and no. I say yes because they have so many pieces, and 503 had a tweet today. It kind of goes along the lines we've been talking about, where some of these players are like DeAndre and Anthony Simons. Those are big expiring contracts, especially if you combine them. So when you talk about getting a star player or someone making a ton of money, they have the ability to do that without pushing like a bad Jeremy Grant type contract on another team. And then they also have Jeremy Grant to try and trade on top of that. So they do have, and they do have some pick assets. It's not as much as they probably should at this point, but they do have some to trade. So, and then they have all kinds of middle-ish contracts like Robert Williams and Thibault as well. So, they can match any salary pretty easily, and they can be in play for a lot of players, I think. Now, if you're talking some of the, like a star player, like let's just say Trae Young or John Morant or something, I'm not saying I think that's what they're going to go after, but I don't know if other teams have outbid them or not, but just in terms of a Giannis becoming available or something like that, they have the pieces to try and match the contract. But
the problem, go ahead.
But the reason why I don't know if this is going to be a crazy offseason, because I always come back to this. Like, it's the Blazers, it's Joe Cronin. I could definitely see them being like, okay, we had this good into the season. We just need to make a few tweaks, add a few veterans here without really changing much of the core, and then kind of running it back next season. I could definitely see that being the outcome of this offseason.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, it could. It just feels different. It feels like they're almost willingly embracing expectations for the first time. Like, even when they had Dame, it wasn't really like they embraced expectations of winning. It was like, yeah, we're going to try super hard to build a winner. You know what I mean? But now it's like, yeah, playoffs,
it's
baby.
Be uncomfortable how hard we're going to win.
This is like the first time a Joe Cronin front office has embraced any expectations of winning. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like with Dame, it all felt kind of forced with his comments, and he talked about how they were going to try really hard to get good enough, but never actually did. You know what I mean? This year, it's almost like they're kind of walking into expectations confidently, which is why I think it's super unpredictable. Because, yeah, they could always kick the can down the road and just do absolutely nothing, and I would not be surprised. I would absolutely not be surprised, because they've done it enough to the point where it's like nobody should be surprised if they do it again. But given the fact that they seem to be embracing these expectations, and you hear this rumor, and they have a bunch of expiring contracts, and the success they had this past year. I mean, last season they did trade 2 first-round picks for a really good player. So it's not like they didn't go that route last year, at least a little bit. That's why I think it's completely unpredictable. Part of the reason why I think it's completely unpredictable, and here's the problem they're going to face this offseason. They only have 4 tradable firsts this offseason. They only have 4 tradable firsts. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you loop Chicago in on a deal.
Right now, they only have 4 tradable firsts, barring trading for their pick back, which people told me didn't matter, but now we're hoping for the 8th seed so we can lose the 15th pick. Which is funny because, dang, that matters, right? Also, having more future picks to trade. But yeah, the Blazers, so they owe their 2026. They can trade their 2028, one of their 2029s, 2030, and 2032 becomes available after the draft.
Well, that they couldn't trade 2028 if you're saying right now, because that's part of the protections of the.
Well, you just word it like 2 years after, or you lighten protections on the Chicago pick, like.
But that's not for sure 4 picks then.
They can trade up to 4 tradable first. They might have even less. Okay, but if you word things like 2 years after the Chicago pick conveys, and then 2 years after that, and then, like, you can potentially trade up to 4 future firsts. Basically, let me put it this way. The Blazers have 3 to 4 tradable future firsts this offseason. Okay? My point that I want to get to with this is the Blazers cannot go out and trade like 2 firsts for Cam Johnson. You're trading 2/3, 50% to 67% of your tradable firsts that you have left in the cupboard. So basically, after this move, you have 1 to 2 tradable firsts. You basically don't have any draft capital left to make any meaningful moves. You cannot go make a trade for Cam Johnson, because Cam Johnson would probably come off the bench. He probably should come off the bench behind Kamara, behind Avdia. Yes, he's a great fit because his shooting is a need, but he's a role player. So, like, why would you, as Portland, you have a lot of good role players. You do need some shooting, but you can find shooting. You need star upside, or you need the ability to trade for a star. That's the worst position to be trading 2 first-round picks for Cam Johnson, which is probably what it's going to have to take. And then when it comes to stars, right? Like Ja, Trey, you have to be confident that they can lead this team to contention if you're serious about contending. And this goes back to, do they want to just make the playoffs, or do they want to contend? This goes back to that conversation. The only way the Blazers can trade multiple firsts, or even if they only trade 1 first and it's the best of Milwaukee, Boston, and Portland in 2029, because that's a really good first, if they trade that pick, or if they trade 2 future firsts, it has to be for somebody who's a star, who's already a legit star. Otherwise, it does not make sense with the Blazers being in the position they're in. That's why I think this offseason is also unpredictable, because I think they'll be aggressive for stars that become available, but I also think so many of them don't make sense to actually go after. It doesn't make sense to trade 3 firsts, basically all your future firsts that you can trade left for Sabonis. It doesn't make sense to empty out the cupboard entirely for Domantas Sabonis. Then you're the Kings. It doesn't make sense to empty the cupboard for Ja Morant with all his baggage. It doesn't make sense to empty the cupboard for Trae Young. Like, basically you're coming out of the rebuild like, yeah, we got some better role players than we did with Dame, but we got off-brand Dame and Trae Young. It's a worse version of Dame. But we got better role players. Yeah, okay, cool. And you still have no first-round picks. You're kind of back where you started, where, you don't have a good team good enough to contend. So that's why what Jake Fisher says worries me, because I could see the Blazers maybe emptying the cupboard for a Trae Young or a Sabonis or a Zion. And that's scary to me. Now you have to hope, all right, maybe they trade Sharp or Scoot or get something back for Ant, and that's how they get more assets and they clear up that problem, and then they go get somebody at another position. I don't know. But the only way they can justify making aggressive moves is if they pull off an absolute fleecing, or if they get super creative and have many moves in order to set themselves up in a way where they can get somebody that's meaningful and then have enough down the line to add to that to the point where they can contend. And we just haven't seen that from the Blazers in any offseason. So this offseason is super fascinating for all those reasons. I don't see how they live up to the expectation that they're going to get much better externally this offseason in a way that makes any sense.
And that's why it's coming back to small moves, small tweaks, draft a player, whatever draft pick they get, hope that player becomes a rotation player, and run it back. I mean, that's then they could say like, "Oh, we were building towards this last year," and maybe that's what they're going to try to pull off this offseason.
See, but like, I don't know. I think this is I think the people that have supported this front office are expecting changes. I think there's people that I've always seen defend Cronin on the internet, right? Yes, I'm active on Twitter. I look at Blazer forums, right? I like seeing what fans say because fan sentiment, I think, matters a little bit. I know you and Crushables had a conversation about that in regards to Nico Harrison and the Mavs and whether GMs should take into account what fans think last night on Hoops Crush. But fan sentiment is interesting to me because you have a large section of this fan base that loves Joe Cronin, loves what he's doing, but they want moves. They want Anthony Simons traded. They want Jeremy Grant traded. And even if you bring those guys back, like you can't really justify starting Jeremy Grant, so it'd be just fascinating just to see them bring $32 million off the bench, right? So that's with them walking face first into these expectations, and the majority of the fan base, I think, at this point are like, yeah, you got to get rid of some vets. You got to continue with the youth movement, and maybe you can get a lot better and make an aggressive move. A lot of people would like to see that. I just think running it back as is going to be met with more of a negative reaction this offseason than it has been at last year's trade deadline or last offseason. Now, there are people that will always move the goalposts for this front office. I fully believe that. And there's people that will always carry water for this front office. There are reporters, unfortunately, that will always carry water for this front office and for this coach and basically say, like, they're in the position they're in for a reason. And, you know, you're not a GM. You're not a coach. How do you know any better as a fan? Right? Fan is short for fanatic. We'll hear all that talk. But at the end of the day, you can't really justify bringing back Jeremy Grant off the bench making $32 million a year. But trading him is going to be impossible. And you're talking about being aggressive, so standing pat isn't really that. Well, you know, maybe they're not talking about being aggressive. They're embracing playoff aspirations, though. And Jake Fisher is talking about how they're a team to watch on the trade market this offseason. So that there's a lot that goes into this offseason. And I think I just want to look ahead to like 5 months from now and to when we're putting a bow on the offseason and when we're looking back at these conversations.
Yeah. I mean, isn't the most obvious thing to the goalpost just moving to, well, he could probably get more value for these guys at the trade deadline? It's the same thing that happened. Right? At some point, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, at some point, you just start pulling receipts, right? Like we said this the last two off seasons. Like we said this the last four transaction windows. No, goalposts will always move. Goalposts will always move. The goalposts are on wheels, absolutely. But I do think for some people it's going to be like, okay, why? You know, like we keep saying this. Why are we going to say it again? Like.
Because we had such a good end of the season that we need to see the progress it made going forward.
Eric, like that's I mean,
I'm just telling you what they're gonna say. Like this is what. Baffled you.
You didn't baffle me. It's just I don't know. Like I've seen enough people say they wouldn't be cool with that to where it's like, okay. It's different. It's different. Like in the past, this fan base has kind of leaned into that, I feel like. Now it's kind of to the point where this fan base is leaning into it less, and it's like either get rid of the vets and embrace the young core or make a move, take a swing. That seems to be more of the sentiment than in previous off seasons or previous trade deadlines. So of course, we just have to wait and see. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what the sentiment is going to be afterwards. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of people that will excuse this front office no matter what they do. Honestly, I think having a quieter offense isn't even the worst thing as long as you trade Ant and I don't know. Like, I want to start Scoot and Sharp next year. I want to start Denny. I want to start Kamara. I want to start Klingon. I think, 8 and being expiring, if you keep him to the deadline, it's not the best thing, but whatever. Maybe Klingon supplants him as the starter because he's just clearly better next year. And, I think the one guy you kind of have to trade, in my opinion, is Anthony Simons, because I think at some point you just got to let it roll with Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp. And beyond that, whatever. If it's quieter offseason, it's fine, if those things are met. But you have a smile on your face, and earlier you talked about something you heard. I assume it's they are more in love with Anthony Simons than they were ever in love with Damian Lillard. What do you got?
No, it wasn't a smile. It was a.
Why was it an?
Because I mentioned that I heard something that you're gonna hate Torrey.
Yes.
And it's not that they're in love with Anthony Simons or whatever. But I did hear that he is part of their plans, and they're not really looking to move.
So what is their plan? What is their plan then? What is their plan?
Well,
if Ant's in their plan, then their plan isn't Scoot or Sharp. So why'd they take them 3rd and 7th?
Okay, so Sharp is most likely the starting 2 or whatever. Scoot. I mean, they view it. This is just what I said. What I heard. They view it as if he earns the starting spot over one of those 2 guys, great. But they're not going to just hand it to him. It's just what I heard.
They're idiotic. They're idiotic.
I mean, you could say that, I guess. Some people would say that's idiotic, but.
That's very idiotic. Scoot, as a starter last year, played well enough to earn more starts. And that was year 2. He was 20 for most of those starts. 20 years old. Basically, it's, we're going to screw around with this guy's minutes, this guy's role. We're never going to fully give him the keys, even though he's a point guard that we drafted 3rd overall. We're never going to fully give him the keys. Even as he improves, we're still going to value the vet. And guess what? If they're playing the same, they're going to value Anthony Simons ahead of him because Anthony Simons is the vet they're paying more, right? So basically, it's you know what? We're going to choose Anthony Simons over Scoot Henderson, and we're going to portray it yeah, Scoot has to earn it, but then we're going to make it hard for him to actually earn it so that we can choose freaking Anthony Simons over the guy we drafted 3rd overall.
I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily going to make it hard for him to earn it. I don't know what necessarily that means. I mean, maybe he...
Not catering the system to him at all because he's not even a starter, and then his minutes are bouncing all over the place, and then we've seen Chauncey when Scoot has good games, and Scoot will barely play in the 4th quarter while Anthony Simons is struggling, and Chauncey loves his vets, and we just signed him to a 3-year extension. It's we are not actually trying our hardest to get the most value out of the dude that we chose basically over Dame and drafted 3rd overall, and that pisses me off. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. You're right. That was something that I was going to hate.
Yeah, and then along those lines, I did hear that they were going to obviously try and trade Jeremy Grant, but that was not... They weren't super hopeful on that front, and there was some talk that they would be willing to... Both sides would be... okay with him coming off the bench as well. So you got Scoot and Jeremy off the bench next year.
This is so stupid, dude.
No,
this is so dumb.
I know. I'm not saying that I agree with any of this. And just to be clear, going back to an earlier conversation, so I'm totally fine with vets, but the Blazers could have set themselves up to have vets, cheaper vets, while also being able to acquire assets and have vets. So you got to be able to do both. Detroit is in a position where they still have cap space, can add vets, and still make trades, still have a bunch of assets, things like that. Houston's the same way. They have a ton of pick assets they can use. They have a bunch of young guys they can trade. They have these vet contracts that they can match salary with. So like that's kind of it's kind of I don't know. I feel like the Blazers still haven't done a good job of maximizing both their asset pool and their cap situation. But so yeah, going back to the trades, it basically was phrased in a way where it seems like they're going to use Robert and Matisse, their contracts, to try and make a move that way. Because, both of those guys barely played last year.
Both of those guys and 2 first-round picks for Cameron Johnson to be our third forward, so Jeremy Grant can be our 4th forward making $32 million a year. Not even our 3rd forward.
I don't know if Cam Johnson is that guy, but that is the type of trade that it seemed like was most likely. Like, not Cam Johnson necessarily, but like someone who matches those 2 contracts and picks. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying.
It's so stupid. Like, I'm scared, man. I'm scared for this offseason. That is so incredibly stupid. Like, listen, if they traded for Cam Johnson, I would go into the season like, yeah, Jeremy Grant probably should not be in the rotation at all. Even though he still has over $100 million left on his contract.
Play. He's going to play. So.
Yeah, so it's like, if you also get Cam Johnson, Eric, and you're not even choosing 2 of your 3 guards, too, so you got a logjam there. Like, so Jeremy's going to get, like, his 20 minutes a game. If you give up the assets it takes to get, like, a Cam Johnson, assuming that's the type of trade they're looking to make, you're going to play him a decent amount of minutes. Like, is everybody just going to play 30 minutes a game or less? Or is it going to be like, yeah, our guy making $32 million a year is getting DMPs? That's not going to happen. The guy we just traded for in Cam Johnson, maybe we trade 2 first-round picks for him, but he's coming off the bench and playing like 25 minutes a game. Like, why do we give up 2 firsts for a shooter just to play 25 minutes a game? Like, or is it like, Denny's going to play 28 minutes a game or something, and that's going to hold him back from taking that step that we're all hoping he can take? You know what I mean? Like, this, I just don't see. I don't see it right now going into this offseason. I don't see how this offseason goes well, to be honest. With what you said, with whatever from Jake Fisher, I don't see how this offseason goes well at all.
Well, if you just look at it logically, okay, if they are unable to trade Jeremy, like it sounds like they're going to have a tough time doing, and they're just going to say, we didn't want to attach assets, like we didn't feel like we're in a position to attach assets.
They're not going to say that because they don't want to admit they
well, true, but like, I mean, that'll be the default excuse. What I meant to say, like, the media guys will say that, not the team. But like, okay, so let's just say Grant is untradeable, right? And then they keep the 3 guards. Ayton, that was the other thing. Ayton, they're probably gonna let that situation play out. Please don't sign an extension, but like, I don't know if they're going to move on from Ayton, right? So you have Ayton and Klingon at center. So you're not really going to trade for a center, right? You have the 3 forwards, so you don't really need another forward. And then you have the 3 guards. So like, this keeps leading me back to, they don't necessarily need to trade for the forward of the future anymore like they have for several years, because they have Tumani and Denny. They don't necessarily need to trade for the center for the future because they have Klingon. Yeah. They don't necessarily need to trade for a guard of the future because they still have Scoot waiting and like not even being able to get enough minutes, and Sharp, is there. So this keeps leading me back to, I think the Blazers are going to run it back, Tori. Like, I feel like they might make a couple small moves, and, they might use their draft pick, and there could be a player they get, but what position are you targeting, man? Like I don't understand what big move they're gonna make using Matisse and Robert Williams if those are your trade pieces
Yeah.
that really solidify this roster as a playoff team, because you're either moving up one of those guys to not playing much at all, or you're hoping for injuries or something so everyone can play.
Yeah.
Like it just makes no sense, man.
Like trading those guys straight up for Sony making $24 million doesn't really make sense for the other team if the guy the Blazers are getting is any good, because it's like, why would you trade a good player? You know, unless he's on a questionable contract, and maybe it's like, well, we have Jeremy's crappy contract. So I don't know who that is.
Because both those guys, Matisse and I mean, we're assuming Matisse picks up his option. I guess there's a possibility he could decline that, right? But both Matisse and Robert are on expiring deals. So.
See, like, my thought goes to like sign and trade. What if they got weird? You know, what if they use those salaries to sign and trade for someone? And the first guy I thought of, I'm thinking of like, okay, what team would maybe want those salaries back? I don't think contending teams are really going to care to get back $24 million in salary between a guy who can't stay healthy and Matisse Thybulle, who in the past hasn't been able to stay on the floor in the playoffs. Like, I think they'd rather just have the flexibility, especially in the new CBA, than take on that salary for somebody going out in a sign and trade. So I jumped to like, who would need that salary? And I'm like, okay, Utah, because salary floor, you know what I mean? Like, those guys, good vets to have in the locker room. So who's their free agent? John Collins. So that's where my mind just headed, all right? Sign and trade like John Collins. But like, where are you going to play him? Like, you already got, you know, he's a power forward center type. You already got Ayton and Klingon.
Why would Utah want Robert?
They might have trouble reaching the salary floor, right? If they just let him walk for nothing.
I don't know. They probably make a trade and use their cap space to take someone.
Yeah,
off.
maybe. I mean, but like, let's just say, all right, this exercise though is just.
But they're gonna.
If you still have Grant, you have Avdija, you have Kamara at forward spots, and then you have Klingon and Ayton as centers. Like, John Collins was really good this past year, but it's just like, what role then? What role for him? Off the bench at center? I mean, you're probably bringing Klingon off the bench next year still, so what? You don't want to eat into his minutes. Like, what are you doing? At forward, I mean, if you still have Grant making $32 million, like, you're going to pay, I don't know, let's say $55 million for 2 bench power forwards? It's just weird. Like, I just don't see... I don't see... I'm kind of coming around to like, yeah, they're just going to run it back and maybe do a couple very small moves, because I just don't really see how things line up in a way where the rotation makes sense for them to be aggressive. Unless they go get a star, but I mean, who's that guy going to be? This is why this offseason is so fascinating to me. Shout out to Chase McGraw, $20 donation, says, love you guys. Thanks for continuing to be the best Blazers social media platform on the planet. Praying for Dame and go Blazers. What's up, Chase? Good to see you, man. Thank you for the $20 donation. Appreciate you. We got you. We got the content all offseason. Draft lottery in 11 days. I almost said I'm looking forward to that. I'm really not. I'm just ready for the Blazers to be given the 11th pick and move on.
Yeah. I possibly just thought of a guy they might sign a trade for.
Who?
Luke Kennard. I could just say they added some shooting.
Yeah.
like
Robert Williams for Luke Kennard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Memphis might do that too. That might be the play, and then you just
that's gonna be their move, man.
Yep.
No,
and then
honestly,
you draft someone at 10, and then you get Luke Kennard, right?
See, here's the thing. This is why I really want Knipple, because if you get Knipple, you don't need Luke Kennard. And yeah. Knipple's bigger, so he can play the 3. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you solve that need, and then figure something else out or whatever. But yeah, like if they don't get Knipple, I could see them being in the market for Luke Kennard.
Because we talk all the time about the core five, right?
Yeah.
And then if they don't trade Anthony, Jeremy, or Ayton, that's an eight. Those guys are all playing, so that's eight. You have 8 players in your rotation already. They just need one more rotation guy, right? And it wouldn't be a center because you already have 2 centers in your rotation that can only play center. So yeah, you're basically looking at one more player, and we all know they need shooting. So it's, to me, they're probably going to go after that type of player, but I don't know.
I'm looking forward to the offseason, man. Really looking forward to it. If you guys got any targets, feel free to leave them in chat. I just don't really know. Like, what should the Blazers do this offseason? Let me know in the live chat. If they're aggressive for a player, where should they slot into the rotation, assuming that, like, Ayton's back and Jeremy Grant's back and Ant's back? I mean, going back to the Ant thing, like, if that's true, Eric, what you shared with me is true, I'm just so disgusted by that. I'm so disgusted by that. Like, I think it's malpractice to draft somebody 3rd overall and not try and make it as easy as possible for him to actually become a good starter. Like, you should be making it so that he actually becomes one. And by doing the whole, he has to prove it, then mess around with his role and not catering the system to him and this and that. And now we really want to make the playoffs, so we don't need to start him. That's like the opposite to me.
To be fair, I didn't hear that they don't need to start him. They just want to see him run with that and, like, make it so it's obvious he has to start. I don't know.
And then what? They bring Ant off the bench? Ant's probably not going to be happy with that. Entering free agency, so what, you going to walk? Or is going to have absolutely no trade value at the deadline if Scoot earns it? You know, it's just the directionless stuff. It's just the directionless stuff. Like, if this is how they planned on using Scoot Henderson, they should have just drafted Amen Thompson. Because at least Amen Thompson can play the 3. And Amen Thompson's really good. No surprise there. My guy, Amen Thompson. But, like, why'd you draft a guard then? Knowing you had Ant, knowing you had Sharp, why, like, because it's Scoot Henderson is the 3rd overall pick. Okay, well then freaking let him be Scoot Henderson. Like, let him start entering year 3 after he improved a ton in year 2. Like, I just don't understand why everything has to be complicated.
I mean, it was clearly a case where we've talked about this. They didn't want to be wrong on Scoot and trade him and be the team that traded away Scoot Henderson. And then he came in and wasn't as good his first year as they thought he was going to be. And they've kind of tempered their expectations for him.
So basically you have no idea how to scout. You have no idea what to expect from the young player that you drafted 3rd overall that you did a bunch of homework on. Meanwhile, we're touting like Mike Schmitz and the scouting genius of him and this whole department, but like they don't know what they're getting. And then they draft a 40% free throw shooter, 24% 3-point specialist at 23 and Rupert over Kamara at 43. Like, just... It's not what well-run organizations do, I feel like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're, like, I don't know, they like Anthony. It's not necessarily anti-Scoot. It's that they do think Anthony helped them get to where they got this year, so...
yeah.
I mean, they all did, I think.
And
yeah.
To anybody saying, like, Ant's for sure getting traded, I mean, you're probably saying the same thing last offseason. I heard a bunch of people say that last offseason. I heard a bunch of people say that this trade deadline. Like, I heard a bunch of people say that about CJ McCollum for years when he didn't. Gregory, because Gregory's in chat saying there's no way he comes back. If he comes back, Gregory, you have to become the number one Ant stan in the chat. Deal? That's the wager. If he gets traded, you'll be very happy, so you win. If he doesn't get traded, you have to become the number one Ant stan, so we win, because that'd be funny to see. And you just have to gas him up constantly. That is the wager. Because I don't know. I'm not making any more bet. The last guy I made a bet with didn't pay up. Okay? So, like, I'm not making wagers. The last guy didn't pay up. But yeah. Let me know how you feel about Ant, Scoot, that sort of stuff.
My guy Kyle Neely paid up his bet from last offseason that Anthony would get traded.
Do you want to make another bet like that?
No. Even though I kind of feel more confident now than I did last offseason. But yeah.
Here's the thing that scares me. Like, our gut feeling has been right so often in the past couple of years that, like...
Well, to be honest, it's a gut feeling based off of actual things.
Well, yes, but...
So it's not necessarily just like...
Yeah.
But
we'll just say it's our intuition, because that sounds kind of cool. Our intuition is amazing. I mean, like,
you put a tweet out there saying, like, you know, how I had mentioned that the Blazers had no interest in rebuilding. I was the only one saying that. Like, everyone was like, "That's so stupid. They just traded Dame."
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
and now,
you know my Venmo, by the way, for that tweet.
Oh, I need to pay you to gas me up on your own show.
I'm not saying you need to pay me. I'm just saying you do know what my Venmo is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, I'm just. But in terms of betting, man, I had 35.5 for the Blazers game win total this year. They win 36 on a meaningless game in the last and screw themselves out of the 9th pick. I had the Hawks not being in the top 8. They were the 8th seed by 1 game and lost both play-in games, didn't even make the playoffs. So they weren't even a top 8 seed, but technically lost that bet. And then I had the bet with Wes Davidson, which I thought was the easiest money bet of all time. And that was that the Blazers just had to make one transaction this entire season. Just one transaction, Tori. Just like a Delano Banton for a protected second-round pick type of trade like the season before. And they didn't even do that. And so I'm a little gun-shy to make a bet right now with it, no matter how strongly I feel about anything. Because I got some bad beats this season, man.
Yeah. I mean, see, like, for me, it's like, at least if I got beat, at least they, like, chose, you know, to trade him and, like, actually start Scoot next season. Mm-hmm. Unless they trade him for, like, Jaw. But, you know, outside of something crazy like that. But I don't know. I want to see him traded more than you do, so I guess that wouldn't be as much of a consolation prize for you. But we'll see, man. I think we end off the show with a Tankathon. Thank you guys for tuning into the show. It's always fun having a lively chat on a Thursday night in the off season. I want to do a Tankathon. I always forget that we don't have a scene until I get to doing Tankathon on stream. So I'll just read it off.
I did take Wes out, or Wes and I met up for beers a couple weeks ago, so I did pay that bet. And then I did pay Gray his money too. So Unlike these other people, I pay my bets.
I know. But when I win a bet, I don't get my $5 from Desmond.
Well, at least Gray paid you last year. So
True.
he paid too.
True. All right, we're doing a tankathon. I'm reading it out loud because I don't have a screen share set up. 14 is San Antonio. You guys should know the order by now. 13 is Atlanta. 12 is Chicago. 11 is Dallas. And at 10 is the Portland Trail Blazers. It's just the same old crap, man. Same old crap. All right, at 9 is the San Antonio Spurs.
At least they didn't move up this time.
Yeah, but like 9th moved up again.
The Suns moved up again. Yeah.
Again. At 8 is Brooklyn moving down 2 spots. So Philadelphia moved up? No, Toronto moved up. 7 is Philadelphia to OKC, so they get screwed. 6 is Charlotte. And 5 is Utah. 4 is the New Orleans Pelicans. 3 is the Houston Rockets via the Phoenix Suns, getting the 3rd pick from another team for the 2nd year in a row. At 2 is Toronto, which means the number 1 overall pick goes to Washington.
Javon.
Anyway, Javon out here abusing his mod powers.
Javon, come on, bro. Alex Wolf is.
I mean, I get it. He said, I don't know how I did that, WTF. Sure. I just see a comment from Alex Wolf that says Spurs are about to have a Giannis flag in Wemby frontcourt, and I thought that's why Javon accidentally hid him.
Yeah.
Which I was going to say, like, it's Alex, all right? He gets a free pass. But also that is a blasphemous statement that is ban-worthy.
You know, you could just remove the comment. You don't have to.
I think he did it on accident.
Yeah. But my guy, Alex Wolf, is unhideable.
You sure?
I'm just saying, like, there's no reason.
He's
not
very hideable. I just hit him. Okay, I unhit him.
No, what I'm saying is, like, he's too nice of a guy to, like, come in here and be a dick.
I don't know, man. It's not a nice thing to come in here and say Spurs are about to have Giannis flag in Wemby. I think that's pretty mean. Nah, that's very mean.
Okay.
It's very mean. Unacceptable.
Dude, bro, we got the Rockets, the Thunder, the Spurs, all with picks better than us. Like, it sucks.
Yeah. But I don't know. Hopefully the lottery's already over. That makes no sense. It's getting late. Hopefully the lottery is just like, I just want it to be over. Okay, I want it to be done with. Because I was sitting here the other night. I said I was going to resign myself to the Blazers not moving up. But then the other day I was thinking about, like, man, if they got Cooper Flag, like... And then I was envisioning the reaction and thinking about how I would celebrate on stream. And then I was thinking about buying certain things to celebrate on stream. And then I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Wasting your money.
Like, it's not happening. Why am I even thinking about it? I just did another sim. Sacramento got the number 1 overall pick. Like, it's not happening. It's not happening. Anyway. Anything else, Eric?
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back Monday. Hope everyone has a good few days until then. Enjoy all the playoff games. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Yep. Hashtag free scoot.
Oh, yeah. Tori and I are back to balling again this Saturday. I can make the game, so.
Oh God, I think we're playing the defending champs of this league, so.
Oh, nice. We're going to get our butts kicked,
yeah.
but. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But, yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, yeah, we'll let you guys know how it goes on Monday. This is why you got to tune in on Mondays.
The normally confident Tory has completely lost all his confidence.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not confident. I'm just stating the fact. They are, I'm pretty sure, the defending champs, and we are already 0-2. So, and I have not played well in the past week and a half, 2 weeks. So I'm in a slump. I'm slumping. I'm no Anthony Simons. Anyway.
Well, this league is pretty legit, though.
Well, last game we played, we had to do that. I was like 6'8", 6'9". Like there's some teams with some legitimate big men and some good players. So, I don't know. We had some good players. We just haven't played together before, so still working out the kinks. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Fun P is just saying, I gotta end the stream because this dude's comments are just completely off the wall bad. Ant is considered the best trailblazer by everyone outside Portland, including NBA players. All right, bro. Tell me about the NBA players you've been talking to that have told you that. Come up with trolling that is more fun. We need off-topic trolling, not everybody thinks Ant's the best. It's not fun. Let's do better. Anyway, who does Eric's game remind you of? Chris Kaman, and with that, I don't know. Chris Kaman plus Nikola Jokic. There you go.
Julius Randle.
Alonzo Trier. Yeah, Alonzo Trier. Do life advice? No, it's 11:56 at night. I'm tired. I'm out of here. We'll do life advice maybe on Monday. If you ask something in the chat, I'll give you a chat response. Anyway, we're out of here. Shop AUS. We'll catch you guys live again on Monday with another episode of Blazers Uprise Live. We're out of here. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers!